Jac, thank you for talking to us.
You're very welcome.
Before I ask how you got involved in the marriage equality debate, can you tell me why marriage equality means so much to you?
Why does marriage equality mean so much to me? I think the reason that it is so important is not actually because of marriage, which sounds kind of contradictory, but someone recently said that the marriage equality debate is really one big, long anti-homophobia campaign. And I thought that was bang on. And I thought the journey that we have come in the last 10 years in the process of trying to achieve marriage equality has been absolutely fundamental to the change that we are experiencing as a community in Australia. So for me, the end point is important, but that journey has also been incredibly valuable.
How did you get involved yourself?
Well, my partner Sarah is Canadian, and we were in Canada with our son who had just been born. We were on maternity leave, so we were there for a few months. We'd gone to visit Sarah's family in Toronto, and we were literally driving down the 401, and it came on the radio that Canada had just legalised same-sex marriage. And we hadn't really been following it, and it was really quite a remarkable moment. And I said to Sarah, "Oh my God, that's incredible." And I said that, we could get married. And the next sentence was, "Well, shall we get married?" And Sarah kind of said, "Yes, let's get married." So we got home from the drive 20 minutes later. And I think the first people we told were her sister and brother-in-law and then her parents. And then because we had a little bit of time, we thought we would do it then. And so we got married, I think it was 6 weeks later after that decision. And that was the start, if you like, of this journey for us.
In 2004, the Marriage Act was amended. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so when we got back, we thought we would run some kind of legal test case to challenge the existing legislation. And we hooked up with another couple, Jason and Adrian, and we made some inquiries, Melbourne Uni Law School, and we had a number of people who were very keen to run some kind of legal challenge for us. So what we did is that we lodged an application in the family court in Victoria to seek a legal recognition of our marriage, of our overseas marriage. So we wanted the court to determine whether or not we were legal in Australia. Because at the time, if you looked at the legislation, that was quite ambiguous. And the sense from our lawyers was that there was a good chance that they would have to rule in our favour, because it didn't specifically say that overseas same-sex marriages weren't legal. So the default position was that we were. Anyway, we had our date set in the family court, which I believe was a Friday, and the debate was held in federal parliament early that week, and there were references to our case and to Sarah, and I think it was the Tuesday they changed the law. So it knocked out our application, and our case was never heard, because then it became very clear that it would not be recognised. So we did change the law, but in the exact opposite way that we had planned, and we've been trying to fix that ever since.
Do you think if you hadn't tried to put a test case, the law would have stayed as it was?
I think something would have happened at some stage, and the government has lawyers too, and they would have realised that the legislation had a few holes, and someone would have done something.
We know that more recently the ALP have come on board, some people in the Liberal Party have come on board, the Greens have supported marriage equality for some time. But back then, did you receive much outside support?
Oh God, no. It was entirely, completely different. In actual fact, within the community, the response was anything from indifference to hostility. And that's very hard to believe now. And I'm going to make some very broad generalizations here, but for a lot of my lesbian friends who come from a feminist background, they had a very negative view of marriage. Traditionally, marriage is ownership, where family violence happens, all those very negative things. Why on earth would you want to go out fighting for something that we have been challenging and arguing against for the last 100 years? The gay boys, we're, aping heterosexuality, we're different. This is one of the things that makes us different. We like that. We don't want to be the suburban married couple. This is not a path that we want to go down. And so the community did not embrace this idea at all back then.
What has changed and why?
What has changed and why? I think that people have recognised that marriage equality is about equality more than marriage. And so irrespective of your view of marriage and whether you want to get married, this is still a very good fight to have. And it is still helpful for our community, for our young people, for all those vulnerable people out there, for us to be having this fight. And I think people have come around to that idea. And again, it's that issue that this is really about challenging homophobia fundamentally. And the marriage equality part is the nice bit that we get at the end. But everything that we're doing up until we get to that point is incredibly important. And I think people have recognised that over time.
Why have Australian politicians been so slow to support marriage equality in general?
Okay. I should be careful. I'm English, you're English. Look, I think there is a difference in the culture. I go back to the UK and it's everywhere. Nobody gives a stuff. You're watching the TV and half the people you're watching on any given night on the TV are lesbian or gay. You walk down the street and on the bus shelters, it's got adoption ads for same-sex families. We're just dealing with that here. So I think that in the UK, and that's probably, that's my experience, they are ahead of us in those kind of attitudes. I think in terms of politicians, I think we've had an unfortunate mix here or unfortunate circumstances, and that we should have got this up with Julia Gillard a number of years ago. And then we're to be done and dusted. But that didn't happen, and I think that didn't happen because of particular influences on her, whether that's the Christian right, Australian Christian lobby, whoever. And so, nobody really ever believed her when she said why she was against marriage equality. It did not make sense. So clearly there were political reasons why she didn't support it, and that was our best shot. And how many years ago was that now? So as a result of that, we're now Turnbull, we're Abbott, then Turnbull, and possibly a plebiscite, and it's endless. So I think that's some of why.
And of course, the plebiscite. A few months ago, a plebiscite was more or less ruled out. Mm-hmm. Suddenly, we're told it's happening. Mm-hmm. Is it too late to stop it? And what are your views on it?
The plebiscite is an extremely bad idea. And I feel that very, very, very strongly. Possibly, I have kids. I've got young kids. They're 8, 10 and 13. They get all this. They understand things. They listen to the radio, or they hear things at school, or they see the internet and TV. And they get quite cranky when they hear stuff on the news. And what worries me is a campaign that is financed and run by the Christian right, probably because they're the most vociferously against us, where they get to have a platform to say that we are not right, the mad, bad or sad, that we're not good for kids. And the impact on my kids and the impact on young LGBTI kids, I think is huge. And I know of organisations that support those young people who say that when this stuff is in the media, they get a spike in calls from young people who are distressed and anxious and suicidal. And, you know, that really frightens me. And so, for many reasons, but chiefly that, I am 100% opposed to a plebiscite.
Do you think there's still hope that Malcolm Turnbull could change his mind?
Look, I think everybody's hoping that. And I think he, you know, it makes sense that he's probably supportive of marriage equality in his constituency. And but again, he is under certain influences too. So to be honest, I can't speculate on that. Yes, it would be great if he did. Who knows?
You may well have followed the referendum in Ireland and the campaign for marriage equality there, which has arguably provided momentum here. One of the big issues that was brought up by those who opposed marriage equality was the family,
Yeah.
and the rights of the child.
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
Well, I feel like our families are in the spotlight at the moment and have been for some time. And partly I feel that the opposition have run out of all their arguments, or their arguments don't work. You know, quoting the Bible isn't going to do it. You know, everything out about reproduction or whatever it is, they just don't hold much water. And I think what they're left with is us and our kids. And this is a very easy catch cry, you know, that we worry about the children. What about the kids? And yes, it absolutely drives me demented on any given day. And for me, it's a constant battle that we have. And I think, you know, that in itself, perceptions of our family have changed in 10 years dramatically. And I think that's another positive. But that focus on families is really destructive for us, for our families, for my kids. And so I feel like I'm up against that one all the time, and increasingly at the moment in a kind of frustrating way.
What do you say to people who oppose marriage equality on religious, cultural and traditional grounds?
What is it? 70% or something of marriages in Australia are conducted by a civil celebrant and aren't, you know, in a faith institution. I have no problem with faith institutions making their own rules that don't include us. That may be an issue for people of those faiths who are LGBTI, and I get that. But for the general population, they can do that. And this is a secular institution, and we should have access to it, irrespective of their religious beliefs.
You touched upon it earlier. What do you say to those who perhaps are sceptical or even oppose marriage equality on the grounds that it's patriarchal or it's a heterosexual institution?
Look, I get that. I suppose it comes back to the issue of equality rather than marriage. And I think one of the interesting things is that marriage has evolved and changed over the centuries, and our coming into it evolves and changes it more. And so my marriage to Sarah in many ways is exactly the same, and you know, with the same issues as my heterosexual friends up the road, but it's also different in a particular way too. So I feel like, in a way, for me, there's a little bit of separation from that. This is not a heterosexual marriage. This is a same-sex marriage, and that's a different thing. So I suppose that's perhaps what I'd say. And again, just the fact that it's about equality. Like, you don't have to get married. You don't have to love the institution, but let us have access to it. That's the important thing.
Is there a danger, though, that it stigmatises unmarried same-sex couples?
I know people say, I don't think so. I never hear that. I never hear people saying, oh, you know, you should get married, or you're a lesser couple because you're not married. I know long-term unmarried couples, straight and gay, and I think that's a bit of a furphy. Maybe not, but for me it is. It's not something that I commonly hear.
Do you find there's a lot of support from same-sex couples and indeed opposite-sex couples who are unmarried but actually do support marriage equality?
Absolutely, and I think that's what's changed too. I mean, the LGBTI community has come a long way, and as has the straight community. You know, we live in Kew. We always say we ended up here by accident. We are the only gays in the village. We are surrounded by heterosexual people, many of whom are our friends, and you know, who are incredibly supportive of us personally, our family, and of this political move. So. You know, I think when Canada passed same-sex marriage, I think there was a 48% support. We're at what, 72 now. So you know, that's a lot of straight people who were very supportive. So again, I think the journey that we've come along over the past 10 years, all those people have come with us, and that's been fantastic.
You've been involved with an organisation, Rainbow Families.
Yes.
What's the relevance with that and marriage equality? Do the two tie in together in any way?
Do they tie in together? Yes and no. I think the Rainbow Families Council, which is a kind of you know, in actual fact is half a dozen people and you know, meeting, but there's a website and support, and we organise social functions and do some political lobbying. I think the lobbying has been mostly around, more recently, adoption, and also previously on access to fertility treatment and names on birth certificate and that kind of thing. But I think it, you know, they kind of rub along together, and I think it's the same thing. I think, you know, is this a generalisation? When you have kids, you know, does that have an impact on whether or not you would like to be married? I think for some it does. And I think the other thing is, you know, kids see things very simply. So the fact that their parents can't get married, why not? Straight people can, gay people can't. You know, that does not compute for them. And that's a problem, I think, because they don't understand the history or see the complexity of it. As far as they're concerned, it's just wrong and it's unfair. And so they don't like it. Because it says that there's something wrong with their family. And so I think that's where its importance comes in as well, in the perceptions of our kids of how their family is seen in the community, in the broader community.
Do you think Australian marriage equality is inevitable here in Australia?
Oh God, yes.
Do you know what the timeline might be? We're in 2015 now.
2015. Well, funny, because when we got married, people asked us, you know, because people have this perception of Australia as being this, you know, easygoing, fun-loving, you know, beach kind of culture. And they're always shocked to find out that it's not like that in certain areas. So lots of people were very shocked when we got married to find out that we couldn't get married at home, and asked us how long we thought it would be. And at the time, I sort of remember thinking, 5 years seemed a bit too short. 10 years. 10 years seemed about right. And I think, you know, referring back to the Julia Gillard issue, there was an opportunity around about that time where it could have happened, but it didn't. So God, what have we got to do now? You know, we've got to get through another election, possibly a plebiscite. What they're going to do with the plebiscite afterwards anyway, it's not like whoever loses is going to give up and go away. So what are we looking at? Another 3-4 years? Yeah.
How do you feel when you see people like Julia Gillard, who, when in government as Prime Minister, spoke out against marriage equality?
Yeah.
And now when they're no longer in power, no longer have that same influence, they support it. Are you cynical? Do you welcome their support?
No. Yeah, look, I am just, you know, there were two things, I think, for me with the last Labour government. And one was Julia Gillard and the, you know, stuff that she used to come out with all the time about, you know, I'm actually quite traditional and whatever, that nobody believed. But also Nicola Roxon, I think as Health Minister, organised a forum up in Canberra. And for me, that did it. I was absolutely and completely appalled by that. I thought, you know, I just could not get my head around it. And, you know, that was the day when I kind of said, okay, you guys, you no longer have my support. I don't want to get this into, you know, party political, but That pissed me off a lot, and I haven't forgotten that.
And how did you feel when people like Senator Penny Wong, even 5 years ago, stuck to the party line when asked about marriage equality? Did you feel at all betrayed?
Look, I didn't. I think she was in a very difficult position, and I think, as soon as it was possible for her to do so, she, came out as an advocate and publicly stated her support. So, I think it's very easy to lob criticism at people like Penny Wong because they haven't come out, as soon as people wanted them to. But she did, and she has, and she's a fantastic advocate not only for marriage equality but also for rainbow families, of course. So, good on her, I say.
Talking of party politics, you've helped co-found a political party called the Australian Equality Party. Can you tell us a bit about them and what they stand for?
I can. Well, this happened, Jason and Adrian, who were the people we ran the legal case with way back. We had lunch a couple of years ago. We'd kind of kept in contact after that, and we're sitting around a table having lunch, half a dozen people, and Jason said, I want to start a political party. And I honestly burst out laughing and said, that's impossible. It's ridiculous. And he said, no, wait, it's not. I've checked it out. This is how you do it. Anyway, so 3 hours later, I was totally sucked in. Jason, can do that. And so since then, we established the Australian Equality Party. And the idea behind it was to have an independent voice for our community in federal parliament. And what Jason said, we've been banging around from the outside for a long time. Both he and I have been active for 20 plus years. And he said, I want to get inside and have our voice, have our community represented inside federal parliament. So that, that's basically it. And the idea is to get Jason one Senate seat, 2016 federal election. And we have been working towards that for the past 2 years.
What are his chances?
Well, oddly enough, one of the discussions we had at the beginning as well was that I thought, his chances are diddly squat, that can't possibly happen. But for me, and what I said to him is that, the journey is important. I think we can do lots of really good work along the way. And so, I'm happy to come with you along that journey, even if I reckon chances of actually getting someone in aren't very high. But because of our system and because of the preferential voting system, it is actually entirely and completely possible for us to do it.
And of course, marriage equality isn't the only issue that the party campaigns on. Are there any other key issues? Well,
it's interesting because we produced a fairly lengthy policy platform that was based on international research and massive amounts of consultation. And I think we have something like 20 plus headings, one of which is marriage equality. So it covers a whole range of areas, from health and education, issues for the trans community, for the intersex community. You'd have to get it out and have a look. Health and human services, schools, young people, rural experiences, aged care. So there are many areas where we can work. And I think that another one of the arguments that is that, marriage equality takes up all the activist oxygen. And yes, I think it does, but I think there are knock-on effects from that that filter down to all those other areas. And I don't think we would be as far ahead in many of those other areas if we hadn't had this process going on here. So I think that while marriage equality is important, yes, there are all these issues. And I can't wait till we don't have to campaign on marriage equality and we can actually start to focus on all of these other issues. As I say, we've got about 20.
So what you're saying is the campaign for equality and LGBTQI rights does not end with marriage equality. There's still other issues to campaign on. How can people get involved who support marriage equality?
Get involved in marriage equality, get involved in political...
Get involved in supporting
anything.
it. What can they do? Can they write to their...
Oh, look, I think, yes, they can certainly... seriously, what we need now is a targeted approach for the however many, sort of MPs, current Liberal MPs who are kind of wavering or who are anti, that's the people we need to get. So, if you are in an electorate where you have a Liberal MP, or you've got a wavering MP, or an ALP, who's not quite across the line yet, and you can find that out by having a look on the Australian Marriage Equality website, that's where we need to target. I always say, I think the most important thing that your average punter can do is have a conversation with someone who doesn't agree with you. And I've had many conversations with the parents in the school playground, as I say, who are very supportive, but I've had some who are less supportive, and every conversation, I think, has the potential to move that person in your direction. And that's what creates change. That's why we've gone from, whatever, 40% now to 72%, because the framework of the marriage equality debate and campaign has allowed for those discussions to take place. And I think it's put it on the front page of the newspaper and on the radio and in columns, and all of that generates discussion. And it's that discussion that brings about change. And so in a very fundamental way, having those conversations is really important. And then if you want to kind of take it up a notch, have a look at a website, and there's all sorts of things. Attend a rally if that's your thing. Write a letter to your MP, sign a petition, lobby your MP in Canberra. All of those sorts of things have enormous value too.
And finally, what do you think of the campaigning so far, and what advice would you give to people such as Australian Marriage Equality?
Yeah.
Is there any advice?
I don't think so. Look, I think that Australian Marriage Equality have done a fantastic job. I think there's also this debate around the kind of parliamentary lobbying and the kind of on the street equal love campaigning, like as if one's better than the other or whatever. And I think you need both. Both are really important. You need, 10,000 people marching through Melbourne or at the State Library or whatever with the placards and getting on the news and keeping a high profile. I think that's really, really important. But so's this. And the change comes from here, because MPs don't change because they see people marching or because they listen to people who are angry. It comes because they have discussions and conversations with different people who are advocating for us, but also with their own constituents, and that has to happen. And I actually think that Australian Marriage Equality have done a really good job of doing that. They've done it very doggedly and strategically over the past God knows how many years. And quite frankly, I wonder they just didn't give up the ghost a long time ago, because they must be bored out of their heads with it. So all power to them, I say. I think they're doing a great job.
Jac, thank you very much.
Thank you.